I'm engaged. How do I get married? I'm your host, Kevin Dennis. In addition to leading the charge at Wedding IQ, I also run Fantasy Sound Event Services, a lighting and entertainment company based in Livermore, California, that I founded over 35 years ago. Each week on this podcast, we'll explore a new corner of the wedding planning so you can prepare for your I-dos without the stress. From budgeting to booking vendors to day of drama, let's talk smart wedding planning. All right, folks, welcome to another episode of Now That I'm Engaged, How Do I Get Married? We have the one and only Don Deardorf with us. So welcome, Don, and welcome, August, as always. So, Don, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my husband and I, Chef Marty, own Aurora Catering here in the East Bay in California. And we started our business really 17 years this year. We are a family-owned business. We have grown since we started. We started during the recession in 2008, and we have survived that. We have survived a pandemic, and we are still very happily married. So I think that's a big thing.
I thought, well, happily married is good. And when you talked about surviving 08, I thought that was the worst thing we were ever going to encounter. And then good old COVID hit all of us. So
and then, oh boy.
Yeah, that was a whole nother level of 08. So that we don't ever want to get into. So, all right. So today we're talking about serving under pressure, how caterers handle the unexpected. So as we jump in, what do couples always seem to underestimate about catering logistics, Don?
For some reason, they think it's going to be easy. And we want them to think it's easy. That's what we want them to feel about it. But they are completely unaware of the intricate choreography of putting together the food and working with the planners and working with the venues and the vendors, how much preparation and hard work goes into it so it goes off without a hitch, so that they never know if anything went wrong, because, things do go wrong. And just as long as they're happy, we're happy.
I always say in the wedding industry, we're the greatest at improv, because that is what we have to do. And I also think that you have the hardest job of everyone in the wedding industry. Yeah, you 100% do. So
it's a very tangible thing. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's like a dance almost, trying to make sure everything goes well, but also at the same time, make sure that they're not realizing any mishaps are happening. So kudos for sure.
Good partners in that dance to make the dance work. So we have a great team that we've put together for these years. So
so what are some things that you think couples can do to make your job easier or other caterers' job easier, and try to avoid any of those mishaps on the front end?
Well, for one thing, I'd love for them to be honest about their guest count and have the expectations. We've had people have 30 people show up extra.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So we really, really communicate with people from the get-go. Once we book with them, I have a list of 45 questions I go through with them so that they are aware of all of the details that happen. There's so much that they've read, bridal magazines and looked on websites, and they've seen what the beauty and the vision, but there's so much more to that. So we want to educate them in all the intricate parts of everything and how we work with them and how we work with our other vendors, and especially the venue. We really want to know their dietary restrictions and requirements, especially for families and wedding parties. We had a wedding in Half Moon Bay years ago where the groom and the brother didn't get along really, really well. So the groom forgot to tell us that the brother had a Muslim diet.
Did he forget or?
That goes on. I don't know, but fortunately it was in a house. They had rented a house. So one of our chefs was able to go in and whip up a meal specifically for the brother. So having as much information about the menu, the food, what they like, what they don't, especially what they don't like. We don't want something to pop up if they don't like tomatoes. We don't want to put tomatoes on the menu. So very important to talk about that. And to be reasonable about the menu requests, because some venues don't have a kitchen. So you can't do a seared something if you don't have an oven, or and there's an extra expense of bringing in an oven. So we want them to be aware of that. And we we ask the right questions. We've been doing this for a long time, so we know what people have asked us. We know what we've learned from our experiences too. So we just really guide them along the way and want them to have fun in the process, of course.
Yeah. Do you think there's a lot of couples that start touring their venues without keeping the kitchen in mind for their caterer?
Totally. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's rough. Because, I mean, you guys have to, again, kind of do a dance when you get there, when you're talking with them and figure out like logistics. And not only is it food logistics, but just preparation, serving, all of that. I'm sure that just adds so many more difficult variables to the equation.
Or there's 5 sets of stairs that we're not aware of. So
Oh my gosh.
learned the hard way to do a site visit or go online with them to see the site before we say yes to the booking, because we want it to be successful for them. We want it to be successful for our staff. We want our staff to continue to want to work with us instead of at the end of the day, they're so exhausted from going up 5 flights of stairs and down and it's hot. So as much education as we have before we book the event to make sure that we're able to handle what they need and be within their budget parameters as well, because it's $1,000 to rent a kitchen. They may not even be thinking of.
Wow.
So,
and does that happen more often than not with the guest count too? Because I used to work for a venue and they had in-house catering. And honestly, it was kind of pulling teeth a lot to get them to just say the number. Or like you said, like last minute, the day of, they want to add on 10 more people. And it's like, well, we have tables out, we have chairs out, we have a certain amount of staff here. And it's very hard to pivot at the last minute. I mean, obviously we do. You can, you know, because it's their wedding day. You want to make those accommodations, but it does just add some unnecessary stress to the day.
Exactly. Well, we all learned how to pivot during 2020, right?
Yes.
So yes.
That's funny. All right. So you talked a little bit about diet restrictions earlier. So I feel like that's a big, we probably could do a whole podcast on diet restrictions. So what is the biggest, I guess, hurdles you have to overcome with it? Or are you surprised by them on the day of a lot of the time? Or, you know, what's the normal approach when it comes to all these diet restrictions that we have nowadays?
It's rare that we're surprised because we really
that's good.
We do talk about it. It's so important if you have a vegan guest that they don't feel like they're not just tossed a salad. You know, there's so many things that we can do now for a vegan menu that are interesting and delicious. In fact, if we have people are not vegan, we don't tell them it's vegan because they may have a feeling about vegan food, and it's really wonderful. So we really talk to them at the tasting. We go over it. We talk about what they want to have at the tasting and what their dietary restrictions for. Do they have a dad who's allergic to seafood? Allergies are super important. We have a big yellow that we put out as I like paper. Just it's right there, like big allergy sheet, because that's so important. And if someone is gluten-free, we need to know, do they have celiac? Because if it's just bothers their stomach, that's okay. But if they have celiac, that's serious. And we work in a communal kitchen. So we have to let them know that there may be airborne gluten in the kitchen, and we want everyone to be safe and happy. It's a big question. And we live near Berkeley where everyone has a different diet.
I was going to bring that up. I'm like, California, I mean, it's kind of two stone, right?
It's from a dinner for 13 people with 13 different dietary restrictions. So
yeah. I feel like it's a blessing and a curse, right? Because you have like California, I feel like that's the stereotype, right? Like everyone has a dietary restriction, but then we have all these options, right? Because, you know, it's kind of more accepted here. You can get a little bit more crazy with the menu.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's trendy. I don't mean to that way, but it's sort of trendy to be gluten-free, you know? I'm sorry, all the gluten people, but.
No, it's
no offense.
It's funny. I'll be honest with you. I'm guilty of that. Like playing the I'm a vegetarian card at an event because I didn't like what they were serving for the entree. So I've done that.
Well,
and for me, it's short ribs. I don't know why I'm over short ribs. And so.
Oh my God, that's so funny because that's what you were to ask me my favorite dish. It would be the braised beef short ribs.
That's funny. Well, it's just because I think I'll go through a weekend of weddings and I've eaten short ribs 3 times in a weekend.
Oh, that's really good to know. That's really good to know.
And so it's just like, and all the couples love them, and I think they're delicious, but it's just like at one point you get over, eating the same thing over and over again, and so that's sometimes I'll go, I'm a vegetarian, but
We have had a guest or two go through the buffet line. They're supposed to be vegetarian, but every so often they eat chicken. We also clarify pescatarian versus vegetarian. Some people are vegetarian, but they will eat fish. So
yeah.
So we're very, very aware of that.
And I have a daughter, a 10-year-old that has decided she's vegetarian and won't eat vegetables. So it's been an interesting.
Oh, good.
It's been an interesting adventure for us in the Dennis household.
Well, if you want to talk to Chef Marty about that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I might.
Help you.
Yeah, I might.
I don't like vegetables, and he disguises them really, really well.
Yeah, I've been getting good at disguising them, and so she's getting used to it. So
that's
anyway.
Love that.
Yeah. I will say there are some caterers I've worked with before or have tried before, and they do a really good job at making vegetables not taste like vegetables. And I super love that because I'm like, this was prepared for me every day this way. I think I could be a vegetarian.
Marty has, what's the word? I don't know what the word is when you don't like it, but then you end up liking it. He's done that with Brussels sprouts, mushrooms, and beets. Because people,
I love beets.
Right? Well,
I'm not a big beets guy. No.
Oh, I love beets. I can eat it.
Well, if you had this whipped beets with whipped cream, you would transform you to a beet lover. It's happened to many of our friends, and we don't do it with weddings. Obviously, if they say they don't like beets, we're not going to try to make them like beets. But we might have it at the tasting just for them to see what it's like. But people think it tastes like dirt, and Brussels sprouts think that tastes like dirt, and they don't. They're really
people have a thing with cilantro too, right? It's cilantro.
Oh, it tastes like soap.
Right.
Yeah.
Or cilantro. Yeah.
I think that's a genetic thing. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I know I did the 23andMe, and it brought that up. Like, oh, does it taste like soap to you? And no, I love cilantro. I'm very happy that that's not a problem for me.
How about that? That's cool.
All right. So when you're preparing for a wedding, how do you approach the what ifs? What are some of the biggest worst case scenarios you planned for, and how do you stay ready for them?
Well, again, we talk to the venue and to the client. We always arrive early to be able to shift gears and rectify any issues that we can see might be potentially an issue before, we'll get there 3 hours early just to be sure that we can fix certain things if we can. If we have non-functioning equipment, that can be an issue for sure, but we do bring butane burners, that we'll use if necessary. We can use chafing dishes to heat food as well. We bring gallons of water to every event. We bring bug fans in case there's yellow jackets or flies in the kitchen. There could be, if it's depending on the place, some place will have fruit flies. So we have these little bug fans that swing around. And we, with over 16 years of experience, that's really helped us see so many things. So we come prepared. Our just in case list has doubled in the last 15 years for sure. Because you see so many things you never thought you'd see. I never thought that would happen. And you're like, oh, wow, that happened. So just being able to think on our feet is a really big part of it, and being able to stay calm and focused and not freaked out.
It's funny you say calm. That's the biggest thing, because it's like, what is that saying? Don't let them see you sweat or whatever it is, because shit does hit the fan when we're doing the weddings, and something does happen. But as long as we're calm, and the guests will have no idea that we flip flop something in order because something's going on, or that's why I always say we're the greatest at improv. So
yeah, I like that line, and I love the dance line. I'm going to both of those and run with them.
The dance it's really, we use that line a lot when we are talking, because we do a lot of Indian flips for the Indian weddings, where they'll do a lunch and then we have to flip the entire wedding for a dinner, and we have to go in there. And so we're like, with the setup people, it's a dance. Like, let me get this corner of the room done first, and then you start dropping tape, like, let's work together, and because it'll be a whole lot smoother process. But the dance it's such a good scenario for us to in the wedding industry.
Yeah. That we transformed wedding ceremony site for 100 people to a dining site in 27 minutes.
Wow.
I have a really fun, fast video of it because they're rolling in the tables, and then all of a sudden it's beautiful with the linens and it was, just everyone had their job. Everyone had their job, and they worked with each other. And it's so critical that the vendors work together. It's like, one of the things to keep our vendors happy, we feed them.
Yeah.
When I did wedding photography for 20 years, and I would come home with these horror stories of, they gave me a sandwich down the hall and I had to be ready to work. So we always talk to the planner. When do the vendors need to be fed? The photographer often and the videographer need to be fed early so they can do their job. So we'll coordinate after the wedding couple have gone through, and the families, then the vendors will often be fed then, because then they're fueled for their job. And that's part of what we do too.
And then as a vendor, I know we all appreciate that, because one time I will never forget that I got a box lunch and the turkey sandwich smelled foul. It smelled sour. It was the grossest thing. And I went to eat the peach that was in my box, and my thumb went through it because it was rotten. And so that night I ate a bag of chips. So
you can't
do your best work.
You can't do your job well with that. Exactly.
Yeah. It was the grossest thing ever.
So we have because I did it for so long, we have a great understanding of really respecting and appreciate the vendors.
Well, the other thing too is we're marketing for you, so when we eat your food, we can, it's because like the Ritz-Carlton does that. They feed you separately in a separate room and something different. And so I never know what the food tastes like because we don't get to eat it, so I think
it's the big hotels in San Francisco who do that. The St. Francis did that. So you can talk about our short ribs then, right?
Yeah. And I love short rib, but it's just not 3 times a Friday, Saturday night dinner. Anyway.
Yeah, but the vendor community talks. So, I mean, give them something good to talk about. So
it's funny because I was working a wedding this last summer, and we were at a facility that wasn't really taking good care of us. And then all of us were sitting there, and we all started talking about venues and caterers that do take care of us. They're like, "Have you tried this food?" Oh my God. And it just started this whole thing. And you're right. We all do talk. Yeah.
About marketing. But if you're doing it even more so, if you're doing it from a place of love and experience and respect, even better. But that's great. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So is there such thing as being too prepared?
Nope. Absolutely not. Yeah. We do a site visit before every wedding. Like I said, we do it now often before we book the event, just to be sure that we'll be able to do what they want successfully. We have the name of an emergency maintenance person on site. In San Francisco, it's really important to have an on-site person who works at the venue. Really, and often the bride and groom don't have that. A couple doesn't have that. So we'll ask them specifically, or we'll reach out to the venue ourselves to make sure that we have an emergency contact. There's a building in San Francisco that was built in 1912. It has not been updated. The elevator is temperamental. If you don't close the top, it doesn't work. You have to run up and close the top to get it to come up from the basement. There's no prep space. There's a prep space, but there's no place to put an oven inside. There's no running water. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
that complicates things.
When we got there, we rented electric hot boxes. So then we planned the menu accordingly so that what we did was successful without having an oven. And the electricity wasn't on in the prep space. So we tried to reach the maintenance person, didn't answer the call. We're running the cords out into the garden, and Marty made it work. He made it work. I just let him do his thing. I was upstairs doing my thing. That's the one where we transformed the room in 27 minutes. So he's downstairs doing, and we're a great partnership in that way. I think being married for so long helps us in that way with business too. So.
Yeah, makes sense.
So
you can kind of read each other's minds, And
I love being on a preferred list for a venue because then I know the venue much better than a place I'm just walking into for the first time. I could be a team player with the client in answering some questions about when can the rentals be dropped off and picked up, because that's another expense. If they have to be brought in on the day of and returned, it's another $500. So we try to educate them. And if we get
there's a comfort.
I love
it's a comfort.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think too, like I think that just kind of, pushes the reason more too of you should hire an experienced caterer because you have the years under your belt of running into those mishaps in order to have that preparedness, right? So, like you said, your list just keeps getting longer because you keep running into situations, but now you know how to avoid those in the future. So, having all those years of experience under your belt only helps with all those wedding what ifs.
Exactly.
All right. So what's the most unusual or unique request that you've had to accommodate?
We had a wedding a few years ago now where the bride's grandfather owned a restaurant many years ago, like in the 30s, and he had a special spaghetti sauce. And they wanted us, they gave us the recipe. We did it. Marty loves doing that. He loves working with people's family recipes, their cultures, learning about them, practicing them ahead of time if he hasn't done it before. We, to this day, use the Skinner sauce. It's so good. And the grandfather came out to the kitchen and gave us a thumbs up at the reception, which just melted Marty's heart. Like, that was all he needed. That.
That's
And
amazing.
also, when the bride got there, she came over to me and she hugged me. And she said, I was so nervous, but seeing you and having you here with me made such a difference. And that's the connection we want to have with our couples, is be friends with them and have them count on us for any question, silly or not, whatever they think, anything they need help with, we're going to be there for them.
That really is the best part.
It's beautiful. That's such a beautiful story. I'm like getting a little teary-eyed over here. But it's just the best feeling when you know you've nailed it and you know that they're going to remember you forever and that you just created such a special moment for them. So it's very rewarding feeling.
Touch. Yeah. So.
Yeah. All right. So now going down the path, what is one of the craziest unexpected challenges you faced at a wedding and how did you manage to keep it on track?
It wasn't super unexpected because it was in wildfire season in Marin.
Oh.
And we were catering a buffet for 200 people outside. PG&E had said there might be a power shutoff. We prepared that there would be a power shutoff. So we cranked up the ovens. Apparently, that's what Marty said he did, was he cranked it up so he could get the food cooked fast. And then we held it in our hot boxes, which we always 30 minutes before service, lost all power. Fortunately, it was afternoon. It wasn't super dark, but we did bring headlamps. We got the bride and groom were so pleased and so happy with how we handled, because there was smoke. It was a really unusual situation. Because we knew about it ahead of time, that was helpful to us. So unexpected. Nothing really came to mind for me because we always handle everything.
Yeah.
Like, no worries, we've got it.
Got it, right.
So, how has your approach to handling pressure evolved since you started catering weddings? I know we kind of talked about that, but I kind of want to expand on it a little bit more.
Well, again, it's about communication. We have a meeting with our staff and just talk about what possible things could happen and how we would handle them. We always have an extra person on hand who needs to do whatever they need to do. Most of the time it's some supply that the couple didn't think about having. Instacart is definitely our friend. We've used it many times. I can't tell you how many times we're counting the inventory for the bar and there's no garnish or no mixer. So we've got to go out. That's why we get there early, so that we can.
Yeah.
And that's what we've learned from experience, because I tell you, when you're not experienced and you go into these situations, it's incredibly stressful.
It really is.
It's so stressful because that is not what you want. You want a happy day for your couples. You want it to be their happiest day of their lives. And so it's just, we think we've seen it all. So we prepare for things that it's just, like I said before, there's always something new. It's just because have been doing it so long, and we have such a great team of people that we can hand off. Okay, we've got this thing going on, go take care of it. We've got this thing going on, go take care of it. And fortunately, it always comes together.
Yeah, that's the best part.
Yep.
So what are some of the biggest misconceptions couples have when it comes to the timeline for you?
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah.
This is just a giant misconception. Some planners have it, by the minute. And we had a bride in Moraga whose zipper broke on her dress.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
So got married. They disappeared for 45 minutes. You got salmon ready to serve, and you cook salmon at the very last minute. And on top of that, the oven in the small kitchen we were in did not work, but they had another larger kitchen that they rented for separate people. It was available, and we drove the salmon to the other kitchen when we got word that they were going to come in to sit down for dinner.
Oh my gosh.
45 minutes late. So, fortunately we had enough appetizers. It wasn't a giant wedding. I think it was maybe 50 people. So that was helpful that we had enough to keep the guests happy and entertained. And I think there was enough booze too. So that helped.
Yeah. Something we always talked about at the venue I worked at that had the in-house catering was that too many people always expected the catering to be like a restaurant. Like, I can just order some fries, or I can just order this entree and it'll be out in 20 minutes. But the truth is you're preparing lots of food for a mass amount of people. So it's not so easy to just whip up one thing or have something come a little earlier. It kind of just has to happen when it happens. Like, I mean, obviously you can kind of adjust a little here and there, but I think that was something that a lot of guests didn't understand either.
That's a really good comment to remember for us, actually, because you're right. It's like, well, I didn't order chicken. I want beef. Well, so we always have extra of everything like that.
You ordered that, though.
They don't remember that they ordered something. So be prepared for everything, right, Kevin?
Yeah, that's what you got to do. It's funny when you were talking about that. I was reminding me of with the zipper. I had a wedding one time where the photographer put the couple in a limo and took them for a photo shoot and didn't tell anyone he was doing this, and went off site. And we were going off the timeline because we thought they were just out front doing photos and had no idea they actually left property. And the caterer was serving filet that night. And so again, last minute cook, like you just want it right. And, they fired the filet and no couple. And so finally mom was mad. The mother of the bride was mad and at the photographer. And so everyone got served their dinner without the couple being there because she didn't want a well done filet. She wanted it done.
It could have been completely ruined. It would have been great. Yeah. Good for her.
Gross. Yeah, no, yeah. She's like, I want it right. So, and boy, did that. I wouldn't want to have been that photographer because when he got back, the mother of the bride unleashed on him. It was something fierce. I was like, well, this guy will never do this again. But the fact that you just didn't tell anyone was just mind-blowing, because he's like, yeah, I'll be out front. We're going to, finish up the photos. Great. And you didn't think that they're going to put him in the limo and take off.
Yeah. A lot of vendors have their own agenda. And that's what we try to avoid by having open communication. We do require a planner for anything over 50 people because that cohesiveness is so important. And they have so much that they can also offer. They can also sometimes offer discounts on rentals. They have great referrals from people they've worked with. They know they've vetted them because they've worked with them before, and they do beautiful. So we have a requirement now that over 50 needs to have a planner. I have great planners to recommend too.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, so how do you balance working with, vendors on the day of to ensure that the day's smooth? And I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to let you answer it.
I would like to hear your answer because it's not always smooth.
That was good. Well, I think it's communication. It always comes to, and that's what I think that's where everything goes wrong is when they're like that photographer, for instance, if he would have told someone that he was taking them to this tree that he saw down the road or whatever, I forget what it was, but then we would have known and you could pivot and not seat the guest. And, it wouldn't have been so stressful. So I think it all comes down to communication. And that's where I think a lot of vendors get in the weeds or they get on the naughty list with caterers or with venues is when they don't communicate. So
the first thing I do is go talk to the DJ and talk about what's your timeline? This is what we have. Does it match? How do you think it's going to?
Sometimes they don't either. So
heads up when something's going to be announced or happen. Just communicating with them for sure.
Yeah. I mean, my thing was it was always better to over communicate than to under communicate. And I think I would almost be annoying sometimes when I was a coordinator, just like overly updating people. I'm like, I know I just talked to you 5 minutes ago, but hey, this happened. But it's just because you don't want anyone to run into anything, especially like leaving in a limo. It's better to just all be on the same page. We know what just happened, what's currently happening, what's about to happen. And, if there are any mishaps, which, sometimes they're just bound to happen, that everyone is in the loop still. And we all have a united front and a game plan moving forward. But like you said, Dawn, all too often that would happen where I don't even know how that does, but just couples creating different timelines for each vendor. And sometimes they'd be off by like 10 or 15 minutes. And I'm like, whoa, like it's kind of a big discrepancy. So definitely good to kind of meet beforehand and just verify those things before going into the day.
That's why it's really, really good to have a planner who can do all that too. It's really helpful because they create the timeline usually. And
and make sure that we're all sticking to it and moving forward. And and if we have to improv, we improv and we move on. So, all right. So as we're getting here to the end, we always like to ask our guests what is their favorite part of a wedding, and I'm curious to hear yours.
Well, you've worked with someone for months often, and you walk into a blank slate, basically, and seeing it just come together and everyone working together and the camaraderie and the laughter, and you got to stay loose. You've just, I don't so loose, but my people too, so they keep me. And just to see, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. And then magically, it's not magic at all. It's hard work, but you look at this room and this is what they envisioned. And I had so many people come in and cry when they see the room.
That's my best. That's my favorite.
Yes. Delivering their dream to them, is really wonderful. We had it's kind of off topic, but we had a bride who requested a 6-foot charcuterie board. She saw it on Pinterest. We'd never done one. And Marty
that sounds delicious.
It was so gorgeous. And she was very particular. She wouldn't let any of her photos be published after because she didn't like them. There were a couple she didn't like them. But she jumped up and down, because she's a little tiny thing. She jumped up and down and applauded when she saw the board. And we do that. We offer that to people now because it's such a massively beautiful, it's an experience, really. We're offering them this food experience. So I love that when you have a special request from someone like the Skinner sauce, like the 6-foot charcuterie board, like seeing their faces when they walk in to see their dream come to life. That's the important part. Yeah.
That was such a great answer.
Yeah, I really like that. Yeah, me too.
I'll Jimmy on that before.
I also knew that this podcast was going to make me hungry today. So I'm definitely going to eat a snack after, but now I'm wanting a 6-foot charcuterie board.
Yeah, no kidding. Me too.
Before a menu call, make sure you've eaten something first. Don't do it at lunchtime. Yeah.
It's just the other day I took my daughter to Costco and she was hungry, and it was the worst decision I ever did in my life. She kept throwing things in I'm like, girl, stop throwing things in the cart. Yeah.
Well,
that's why they have the samples.
Yeah.
Over. She'd be, with a hot dog.
She just wanted to buy everything ever. Well, remember, she's the vegetarian, that one. So, she likes. No, I was just say she's the cheese pizza girl. Well, Dawn, how do we get in contact with you, or how do our listeners get in contact with you and hire you to do all their amazing food for their wedding?
We are available on Instagram, Facebook. We have a phone number. We have a website. It's called.
What's a phone number?
Line in my office, actually. Our website is AuroraCateringBayArea.com. Aurora Catering was already taken, so we have the longest website address in the world. So there's a contact page there. They can email me directly. Most people go to the website. It's just easier to use that contact page. And I just want to finish with saying, always expect the unexpected and stay calm I'll let Aurora handle it.
There you go. I like that. Very nice.
The dance and improv to my taglines too. So
Yeah, that's right.
thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
No, thank you. You were a great guest, and we appreciate having you here on the podcast. And also want to remind all our listeners is go out there if you have a question, send it to podcast@fantasysound.com. Also go out there and review, all those fun things for the podcast as well. So Dawn, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it.
Right.
And Kevin, one more thing. So this week we actually just launched the podcast on our Fantasy Sound website.
Oh, I
so
forgot.
now
Yes.
you can listen to episodes there, and on the first page, when you hop onto the podcast page, you can also ask questions there too. So you can either do it through podcast@fantasysound.com, or you can just go straight to the website.
That's
Look at
great.
August.
Our
Getting her done, August.
wonderful. Our newsletter is going out today, so we're mentioning this podcast. So
Yay!
Yay. We
I'll see you
appreciate it.
tonight, Kevin.
We will see you tonight.
Okay.
Yes.
If I make my flight, that's the next step.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm coming live from Seattle right now. So
That's
anyway.
right. Thank you
All
so
right,
much. Really appreciate
No,
it.
thank you guys. All right, bye everyone.
To our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Now That I'm Engaged, How Do I Get Married podcast, brought to you by Fantasy Sound Event Services. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode. Please get in touch with me if you have a topic you would like us to cover, or if you are struggling with your wedding planning. Please be sure to submit a question at podcast@fantasysound.com. I encourage you to check out our other episodes on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you're a fan, we'd love if you would subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. It helps others find our podcast so they can learn from our guests too. And to everyone listening, happy wedding planning.